You are watching the AxonDAO Podcast.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cooks-Cambell, and thanks for coming back again today. I'm the head of content at AxonDAO, and I'm here with Tharusha Jayasena, Dr. Tharusha Jayasena, who happens to be a postdoctoral research fellow. She's also a chief science officer here at AxonDAO. And I'm so excited to be here with her today and to talk about her research and what she sees possible for the decentralized science and what's next for the field. So, hi, how are you?
Hi. So nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to put like a face in the name. I saw your picture online and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cool to be doing. Like, you seem so young, but you've accomplished so much. You've been working in this field for over 15 years. Is that right?
Yes. Well, in medical research for 15 years, yes.
So what made you want to research dementia in particular?
It was actually quite random. But I've always been interested in the brain and the mind because growing up, my dad was a big truth seeker, you could say, and he had all these like really interesting books. And growing up, I would read them. And I came across this book by Deepak Chopra called Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. And I was like, okay, I guess that started my initial interest in the brain and the mind. And then I did my undergrad, and I guess that was my beginning into that field. And here we are today.
So it really was random.
Yes. But they say nothing happens by random, so maybe it was all meant to be. I was meant to get that particular topic.
You were meant to get that assignment. So what made you want to stay in it?
I don't know. I've just always loved discovery. And when I was 8 years old, my dad got me a microscope. And I think that was one of the pivotal moments I remember of how I just fell in love with that thing. And I would go around the backyard picking up little leaves and, was looking at it under the microscope. And I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world in this leaf. And so cool. I think that kind of helped me fall in love with this idea of not just the world, but discovering the world and what makes up the world.
You're bringing out my inner child, because I got a microscope when I was a kid too. And I'm like, oh, that was the greatest gift ever. I remember that, putting the leaves under and you could see the cells and how the shape of the animal cells was different than the leaf cells. And it's an amazing gift for a kid. So how did you end up choosing what to do? Was that also your undergrad focus? And then it just kind of naturally bridged into your PhD?
So after undergrad, I did a master's, and then I guess, it kind of naturally progressed. I've always been in the field of dementia, I guess, even for my master's. So I worked for 5 years, and then I decided to do a PhD, and with the same boss that I worked for. I guess he became my supervisor. Wow. So it was all kind of I've stayed in the same lab for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. So what's been the coolest breakthrough that you've made so far?
I guess when it comes to science, breakthroughs are quite rare. But I would say that I feel like I've made significant contributions in terms of my field is blood biomarkers of dementia. So we're trying to find, I guess, diagnostic panels, different changes in the protein profile in the blood of patients who've got dementia. And we have found particular proteins that are altered, but we're still kind of a long way off in terms of a clinical translation into a proper diagnostic test.
So how early can these biomarkers be detected?
So for dementia, they say that they can happen decades before onset of symptoms.
Decades?
Yeah.
Wow.
It can be 10, 15 years before the onset of symptoms. You can see changes in your blood profile.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, because in dementia, even if you can delay onset by 5 years, it's going to have a huge impact on your quality of life.
Right. And on the progression
so that's
of
the
rationale.
disease,
I imagine.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of blown away by that.
because dementia is such a complex disease, it's very hard to find a specific biomarker in your blood that's going to diagnose your disease. But there are combinations. So I'm sure you've heard of amyloid. It's the main protein that's aggregated in the brain in patients who've got dementia, Alzheimer's disease in particular. So that's one biomarker.
I was going to say, I've obviously heard of it, but just explain it to everyone else who clearly doesn't know. They're just not as, I
amyloid
know.
protein. It's like the main protein that's it's found aggregated in the brain, in patients who've got dementia, but, levels in your blood can be a biomarker. But that's the current, I guess, emerging gold standard biomarker for Alzheimer's. It will be a combination of amyloid, another protein called tau, and then phosphorylated tau. So a combination of those biomarkers is the current gold standard for blood diagnosis.
So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with AxonDAO.
So that was also very random.
Mhm.
So the pattern here, but I got into crypto, just investing, back in 2018 when I had no idea what I was doing. Then just before COVID started, I think 2020, my sister kind of brought it up again. She was like, "Oh, you were into that thing called Bitcoin." And she's like, "Oh yeah, just heard about it in this podcast." And I was like, she's like, "You should maybe think about it again." And I'm like, "Okay, but if I do it this time, I'm going to like properly research and properly try to understand what it's all about." So that's how it started. And then I just started investing, but then I thought, "Oh, this is not like, I don't know, involved to the level I want to be involved in this." So I started researching different projects. And then I think it was Twitter that the first time I heard about decentralized science was on Twitter.
Mhm.
And then, but I met Chris and AxonDAO on Discord. And back when I met Chris, AxonDAO wasn't really part of DeSci. It was going to be like a neuroscience investment fund. But because I have a background in neuroscience, I thought, okay, I can contribute to this project. And that's how we kind of started with AxonDAO. But then obviously since then it's kind of progressed more to a hybrid kind of project.
So when you first heard about decentralized science, what was your reaction?
Oh my God. I was so excited. Cause I was like, oh my God, it's like
Really?
crypto and science, my two, like, yes. Cause I'm like, oh, I understand science and this is Web3. This is perfect for me. If I could be at the kind of like grassroots, level to the
Well,
whole movement.
I imagine that like because you had that background in neuroscience, you had that background in academic research, and then you had the background in crypto, like it made sense instantaneously.
And
So
also because I felt like I understood the pain points of academia.
Good.
And I was like, okay, I know the pain points. So if we're going to create a whole new system, I think I can contribute.
So could you say a little bit more about that? Because that is exactly what I was hoping to hear from you, like hoping to get your opinion on like because when I came into the space, I had no idea. I had to actually send this to a friend of mine who was a professor and was like, they're talking about solving all the problems with academic research. I was like, me with my bachelor's degree. I was like, there are no problems in academic research. And he was like, how much time do you have?
So you want me to go into the pain points?
Yeah, tell us all about
Okay.
it. So I'm curious,
Well,
like
the biggest pain point as a researcher, as you probably already know, being in DeSci, is funding. So especially for younger researchers or like up and coming researchers, early career, middle career researchers, you can spend like weeks and months writing these things. Like, where you could be actually doing research, but instead you're writing grants, trying to get money with such a low success rate. I would say that's the biggest pain point. And so as a result of that, number one, you're doing a lot of research that you may not personally be really passionate about. You're just kind of following the money, so to speak, because the professor or the PI has a big grant and he needs postdocs to help him achieve the aims. So you're kind of doing it because it's a job, but it may not be your specific passion, if that makes sense. So
Right.
that's one thing. And in science, it's all about metrics. It's all about how many publications you've got, what's your H index, how many metrics, so, and that also feeds into the grant system. To get grants, you've got to publish, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel that's like, you're not, in some ways, you're kind of like a little cog in this system. Whereas that's what I really loved about Bitcoin, because it was like anti-establishment. And I was like, oh my God, can we do this with science?
I love that approach. And honestly, that's exactly what I saw too. When I started looking at it and going, oh, wow, this is trying to address AxonDAO in particular is trying to address so many different problems with the system and all in this one kind of holistic approach. So,
yes.
and
I guess another pain point,
Mhm.
another pain point is the actual areas of research. So, for example, like just say in healthcare in general, it's very hard to get funding for things like nutrition or like things that like the pharma companies won't have any financial interest in pursuing. So that's another area where I saw Web3, kind of having a big impact because it's not going to be influenced to those kinds of bias areas. There's a capacity to kind of like democratize the projects, and the community decides what it wants to fund.
The community decides what's a fun, and the researchers decide what's important to them. And so they have something that's really intrinsic.
And you can match those two together.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. So that's the
and I also love the idea of like people taking sovereignty, especially when it comes to data, which AxonDAO is obviously like a interest of ours, is to kind of have people take sovereignty over their health again, instead of looking for like an expert to tell them what to do, like to kind of have more ownership of it. And there's some Web3 projects like in the last cycle, I think they were called Steppen. Like, they were giving you tokens for walking, for physical activity. So it's almost like gamifying health.
Mm-hmm. So incentivizing the things that are actually important for our well-being.
Yes. Yeah. And allowing people to take sovereignty again over their health.
I mean, I won't tell anybody if you don't tell anybody, but like, what do you think academia is going to say about this?
Say about like sovereignty over our health data.
Well, academia in general too. In general, about like being able to fund things that are based on what interests people versus what interests, the institutions that are funding the research.
Yeah, that's true. I think there'll probably be some hesitancy, maybe in top of the hierarchy, so to speak, because it is a bit of a new way of doing things. But if you're talking about the pure pursuit of science, you should be welcomed.
Yeah. So I was at a conference the other day, and they were talking about the impact that decentralized science will have on institutions. And they said eventually they think that every major institution may actually launch their own DeSci projects to start to explore, because I find that academia is more interested in answering questions and solving problems, and they try to tie that to real world impact. Institutions, not always so much. They tend to tie it to profit first and problem solving later, but only as
also like keeping the current dogma going, the current trendy things to research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, from one lens, I understand it, because if you're in business, you want your profits to be predictable, and academia is not always about predictability. Sometimes you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail, but you're learning all the way, and so that's like the true pursuit of science that you were talking about. So, Dr. Tharusha, what do you think makes a DeSci project work from a scientist's perspective?
The main difference I see is the timeframes. So in the DeSci projects, I see them as being more like short-term kind of focused. And but the good side of it is that it allows you to look at more like really like innovative or kind of like disruptive ideas. Whereas in traditional academic projects, it's more like a long-term plan that you're going to put in. And it's more like you're trying to get like students, you've got like postdocs, you've got PhD students working on the project. It's more like a more rigorously planned out kind of project, whereas DeSci is much more short-term focused, but really potential to be disruptive. So like high risk, high reward is the main difference I see.
Do you think that DeSci enables research in a way that academia doesn't?
Yeah, I think it has the capacity to be like, almost like in the startup world where they say like fail fast. Like it allows you to test things faster and maybe get to something faster as a result, get to the innovation faster. So I see maybe the potential for that. But I feel we're very, very early, and a lot of the experimentation, sometimes we have to consider the balance of what we're doing, especially with maybe some of those like the meme tokens in DeSci. So I think it's all a good thing because we're like kind of at the beginning stages of this movement. Yeah. But it's maybe something to consider as you move forward, to make sure that there's a good balance between the scientific rigor and the innovative, disruptive ideas.
So it sounds like DeSci could almost work as a proof of concept for larger, more rigorous studies. So you have a DeSci project that's like moving really fast, that's like funded by the crowd. You get something that you're like, these initial findings are really exciting, and now let's roll this into
let's put some structure to it. Let's plan it out in a more rigorous way to really test and validate these initial preliminary findings.
So do you think then, based on that, like anybody can be an independent researcher?
Actually, I was talking to Chris about this when I first met Chris, because he was always telling me, oh, I'm not a scientist. I don't really know this stuff. And I'm like, well, actually, Chris, it's like, just because you're not a professional scientist doesn't mean you can't be a citizen scientist. Doesn't mean you can't contribute. In fact, your contribution will be very valuable. And I think that's another thing that DeSci offers that traditional academia doesn't really have. And that's participation from the patients, the community, the public, to actually be involved in the design of the experiments and actually tell us what they want, like what's important to them. Like maybe blood biomarkers or diagnostic testing for dementia is not important to the dementia patient. Like what isn't actually important to them?
So it's really led by people that are directly impacted by,
exactly.
And that's a kind of a cool kind of, I'm trying to think of what the word would be in science, but it's like an inside out perspective, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I was saying before, it's really cool because it's like, like kind of flattening that hierarchy that we have in academia where there is no hierarchy. We're all contributing to the goal, which is health and well-being and prevention of disease, which we all want.
Yeah. So I was saying that like the way that you describe it, it's not just it's a joyful thing to participate in, but it's also everyone's responsibility to move this forward. Like, and not just assigning it to like, oh, it's the scientist's job to figure out how to make us healthier. Everyone participates.
Yep. And everyone contributes and has like a important contribution. It's not just, oh, these experts know what they're doing and we just have to kind of take their word for it. It's like, no, I actually have, as a patient, I have something important to contribute to.
Right. It's like there's really no scientific research that can be done without considering the impact of the patient and also the patient experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to other scientists that are curious about DeSci but don't know where to start?
Come on to the Axon Twitter page and follow us. But I would say there's definitely a lot of good resources, lots of blogs. I think on the Ethereum website, there's a really good introduction to DeSci, YouTube videos, lots of like, DeSci influencers on YouTube, Twitter, AxonDAO Discord, or reach out to me as well. Just reach out to any other scientists that, you kind of feel you would like to maybe work with or resonate with.
Are scientists typically
one of the amazing things I have discovered about DeSci is everyone's just so friendly and so open and welcoming. You're going to definitely not have any issues connecting with people in DeSci.
I was going to ask you, is everyone traditionally open to this? Like, I think some of us that are like citizen scientists are a little afraid to approach scientists and be like, hey, I have an idea for a project. What do you think?
Okay, that's true. Yeah, I never really thought of it as a general public coming to. But yeah, well, I think that's one thing that AxonDAO can potentially help through our grants. We could probably do like small grants for like more like citizen science kind of based projects versus like more traditional scientific academic projects as well, to kind of entice people to, be more courageous.
It's easier to get someone's attention if you step in and you're like, I have a scientific idea, but I also have a check for $100,000. So you want to help me figure out my project?
Yes. They're actually talking about the challenges of the DeSci space. I think that's one of the biggest challenges I personally have is that I just feel so lonely because I'm like, oh my God, there's no one to help me because for example, working on Psylosys, it's the first time I'm actually looking at more like a clinical study with like human participants. Like, cause most of my research has been like lab-based work, like working with blood samples, So yeah, that's one of the challenges I've actually personally faced.
So tell us about Psylosys. What exactly is this project?
So it's actually under review with the IRB at the moment. And I think we should get an approval or, by the end of the month. So hopefully in May, we can actually start recruitment. But the study, I guess the main aim of the study is to look at microdosing, the effects of microdosing on cognition, emotional regulation and creativity. It's an observational study. So what that means is that we're not actually administering the microdose, the psychedelics. What we're doing is we want to recruit participants who are already microdosing. So people in the community who already microdose psychedelics, we want to recruit them into the study. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get you to do various assessments. We're going to do different neuropsychological assessments of memory, creativity, your emotions, And then also we're going to be collecting voice recordings. So we're going to record your voice. And then when we do the data analysis, we're going to break your voice down into different parameters such as pitch, tone, your words, your sentiment, etc., your frequency of certain words, to try to analyze if we can use the different aspects of your voice and the different words you're using to predict your mood, your creativity, and your emotions. And then also how that's changing on the days that you're microdosing.
That's cool. So we're using voice biomarkers to track all of this.
Yeah. So can we, for example, on the day, maybe you do your mood scale and you're feeling particularly like happy. Is that reflected in your voice?
And then is that also reflected in your creativity or your emotional regulation skills?
So there's lots of research that's already been reported that between depression and your voice. So there's definitely links between depression, and that's kind of, I guess, quite obvious to a lot of people because, you know, when you are in a lower mood, your voice does tend to change. Like you might have obviously more negative words, your pitch might be lower, you might have more pauses when you're talking. That's already been established, but no one's looked at the voice biomarkers of microdosing or psychedelics yet. There's been one paper so far. So another important aspect of the Psylosys study is that once we've collected your voice audio file, the AxonDAO's A+ voice algorithm will then break up that voice audio file into different parameters. And so that algorithm will help us detect that is correlated with mood, creativity, emotions, and the microdosing.
And we would be one of the first with IRB approval, right?
I think so. Because even getting the IRB has been like, oh my gosh, such a journey for this learning curve for me. Because I'm like, okay, in traditional science, you just go to the IRB and you just, you know, but I have to talk about like tokens and all this stuff to them. And I'm like, oh my God, they probably wouldn't have no understanding of, you know, what I'm actually talking about.
So this is a DeSci project that's being held to extremely rigorous academic scientific standards.
It's like basic academic like standards to get ethics approval for anything. So the only thing, only time you probably wouldn't need ethics approval is if you're working with like cells, some very basic kind of research. But even if you're working with animals and especially humans, which is you will require ethics approval from an ethics board. So yeah, it's been a big learning curve, but very, 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 very cool as for a scientist because I'm like, I love this. Because I'm just so out of my comfort zone.
Right. Which I imagine most scientists love to be out of their comfort zone. Yeah.
And it's going to be kind of cool because I think when we complete it, we'll be one of the biggest microdosing studies in terms of the sample size. Because I would like to get about 300 participants in the study.
That's exciting.
So I think it's easily going to be one of the biggest studies.
What are you hoping to learn from the Psylosys project?
So we're hoping, we have a couple of different aims, but the main aim is to see, the effectiveness of the microdosing on things like cognition, creativity, and emotional regulation.
I'm like, so like, oh my gosh, like, I think that this is such a cool thing that we're doing. And I'm really excited to see this because so much of the work that we can do is starting to answer these questions and starting to create a structure for how we answer these questions going forward. So it's cool to kind of see us like both building the infrastructure and playing within that infrastructure.
Exactly. Yeah. And like we were talking about before, getting that preliminary evidence or preliminary research out there that we can like build on and others can build on. Because I think the biggest drawback is a lot of the microdosing work has very small sample sizes. They're very well structured trials, but the sample size is so small. And yet, like subjectively, there's so much evidence from anecdotes that people are seeing positive effects of microdosing on their like depression, on their anxiety, their general well-being, their creativity, et cetera, et cetera. However, the science, like the evidence from the literature is not conclusive yet. So I'm just like, maybe it's a sample size issue. We just need to do like a big study to kind of validate the anecdotal evidence that we're not seeing yet, like validated in literature. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
For a platform like AxonDAO, what's the best thing that we can do to be more friendly towards researchers who just don't speak blockchain?
I would say don't use the word blockchain. Like, it'd be amazing if we didn't have to use the jargon. Like we didn't have to talk about crypto. We don't have to talk about Web3. We don't have to say the word blockchain. Can we just be like, like you just say you use Wi-Fi, but you don't understand how it works. You just put in your password and you connect to the Wi-Fi. So I would love AxonDAO to be like, have that kind of user interface where it's almost like you don't even know that you're in the crypto world. Because I would say even myself, I don't understand blockchain, the technicalities of blockchain. So I think that would be an amazing thing if AxonDAO can have an interface where it's just all seamless to the researcher.
So then how will we tell them how awesome it is? What do you think we should be telling them?
Well, I think we tell them it's community-based and it's decentralized science.
Yeah. And go back right back to those pain points you talked about, right? Focus on what the problems that we're solving instead of like the jargon and underneath it. Like Wi-Fi creates connectivity, but you don't have to know how.
Most scientists don't really care about commercialization. They just want to make the impact, So I think, but I think one way you can talk about it is talking about the IP that some other DeSci projects talk about, like the IP NFTs. So ways that the scientists can start having ownership of the IP. I think that would be quite attractive to a scientist if you pitch it that way.
That's a great idea. It's so helpful to hear you talk about it from the scientist perspective, because this is one thing we really care about in this space is empowering those independent researchers. And we don't always see, the challenges that they're facing in traditional academia, but we want to make them feel like rock stars.
So, but it will take a while, I guess, because there is a lot of stigma, I guess, still kind of attached to crypto. And so, if you go to an institution or a university and you say, oh yeah, I've got a crypto company who wants to fund my research, it may, like in terms of the legal side of things, it may kind of cause a lot of red tape there because they might want to, I don't know, there might be like legal hoops jump through. So I guess that's another answer to your question, that what AxonDAO could do is to help with all that legal side of things. So they know how to talk to the university's legal team to convey the issues that they will most likely have or the concerns that they most likely would have.
That makes a lot of sense. So do you think that their independent researchers, our citizen scientists, can kind of bridge the gap by being less afraid to try it out and go first so that the academics who have been, they've made a career out of science, they're not putting their careers and their reputation
at risk? Yes. Because I think that's why it's probably more attractive to the younger scientists than maybe like a professor. So it definitely, I think, more attractive to the younger researcher. And also because they'll get to pursue curiosity-driven research, which is another incentive for them.
All right. So the best thing that AxonDAO can do is just get published so that the scientific community feels better about this. And then
published and then work on the legal side. So when we do approach universities, we can talk to their legal teams and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is all the ticks are in place. Everything's done.
Right. We'll
take your money.
All of the traditional standards and now like money.
Yes.
Yeah. But also proving that I think there's something to be said for proving that there is sustainability from a profit perspective in doing the right thing for people.
Yeah. And one thing that I've always also been thinking about is like, do we want to just create a new system of academia or do we want to work within it to change it from the inside, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or will DeSci become its own independent movement in itself where we have our own journals, we'll have our own grants, our own granting bodies, our own ethics boards, et cetera, like totally independent researchers who only work in DeSci. They don't work in traditional science at all. That's something that I've been contemplating, like where is it going to go? Like, are we going to, do we want to transform traditional academia or do we want to create a whole new system completely independent of it?
I really love that integrated model you described, though, having DeSci kind of be an early stage for pilot projects, testing concepts, and for early researchers. I mean, I'm in my master's degree program now, and one of the things everyone is concerned about is we need to get research experience because we want to apply for our PhDs, right? But we're all bothering the same, like 3 professors that have grants, and then everyone else is like, I don't have money to take on research assistants. And so we're already at this early stage being funneled towards certain types of research. And I think it would be really cool if, like, say, master's programs, which are typically not very well funded across academia, if master's programs had like a DeSci backed research grant for the for students to be like, yeah, put together your research.
Yes.
I mean, they started us
Yes.
in our very first semester. They were like, start writing research proposals because this is all you're going to be doing for your whole life.
And how cool would it be if you got to pick your project, you go to AxonDAO, you pitch it to us, we give you that initial seed funding, and then you go to the professor and you say, I've come with my own money and I'm going to do this project because that's what I'm passionate about.
That would be amazing. I would be everyone's favorite student.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, I have just one more question for you. If someone listening to this was to just take away one thing from this conversation, what would it be?
I would say, hopefully, if you're a researcher, a young researcher, you see the vision that there is this opportunity for you to be an independent researcher pursuing your own passions and interests in science. And maybe as a token holder or someone who's more like a crypto person, I would say I hope you see that maybe unlike traditional Web3 projects, invest in DeSci because it's like a long-term investment in our health and our well-being.
Fantastic.
And there's actually like people who are really passionate about making long-term sustainable impact here working on these projects.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I mean, this is every time I get a chance to talk to you, I'm just so excited and so lit up about you and what we're doing and what's happening and feeling so hopeful about science and healthcare again, which is something I never thought I would say. So thank you for bringing it back.
Yeah, me too. That's why I love DeSci.
Yes. We got to send you one of our DeSci girl sweatshirts.
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that actually. I forgot to mention how like the other important aspect of medicine, because especially AxonDAO, what we're doing, like this idea of getting all this biometric data that you're going to share and then you get paid for it, but you contribute to medical research. That's probably a big takeaway too. Like an important takeaway is that DeSci has the potential to monetize you, to incentivize you financially to look after yourself and to contribute your own personal data to the betterment of everybody's health, which is revolutionary compared to what we currently have, the system we currently have.
Yeah, our system currently does not incentivize good habits at all.
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about before, we're living in like sick care. No one's really in healthcare. Everyone's in sick care. We can switch from sick care to healthcare, and we can be the power, or we can be the community that creates that change for ourselves.
Well, thank you. Thank you again so much for your time, and thank you everyone for
having
me.
Us.
Of course,
it's lovely
anytime.
To talk to you.
You are welcome back anytime, every week.
Yes, can we please meet once a month?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I want to start talking about the yoga study as well. And I was thinking maybe I could train you up for the Psylosys as well, because I think when we start doing consent, I need people to help me get people's consent. I've got 300 people to do. I don't think I can do it alone.
Yes, I would love that. Y'all, I feel like I'm being knighted as citizen scientist, like right now. I'm like, yay, this is the moment. Yes, I'm in. I'm totally in. Yay.
Excited.
Thank you, everybody, for calling in this week. I'm Alea Cooks-Cambell, and we've had the most amazing conversation with Dr. Tharusha Jayasena, our Chief Science Officer at AxonDAO. I can't wait to see you guys again next week, and make sure you grab your microscopes because apparently we've got more good things to come. We'll see you soon. Bye.